Talked about things that could change, let's talk about something that won't. The generic availability of the extra deck and its consequences have been a disaster for modern game design. Baron deserves a ban. I don't think this is a hot take, but what if it only required wind monsters? What about the Borreload Savage Dragon?
You've gotta be fucking kidding me.
Sick Gatsby here with the different version of the script that I was working on, and despite the knowledge that we were in Banlist season, I figured I was safe to talk about my grievances with generic extra deck monsters, because I thought Konami was too much of a bitch to do anything about it. So if you want the life point and field spell portions of this script, like, comment, and subscribe. Otherwise, let's talk about the April 2024 ban list that brought an unexpected but appreciated change. The banning of Bar on the Floor was something most people considered a possibility given its reprints in Maze and the Rarity Collection, and given any cash tier plus a hand trap was able to count to 10, it's not hard to see why this card had to be hit. But Savage Dragon was something I saw very few Yu-Gi tubers correctly point out.
So, you know what? Forget it. We're just gonna rapid fire the 10 cards that I want banned that would just objectively make the game better, alright? Barone, Savage, Oppo. Every damn combo deck just shits these three out, okay? And you might kind of raise your eyebrows at Savage. Look, if we ban Barone, people are just going to start making Savage, okay? Just like, say the line, Konami, negate, you know?
I've always held the opinion that the generic availability of the extra deck has caused issues for the game as a whole. In its infancy, fusion summoning was so bad it made Kaiba want to jump off of the side of Pegasus' castle. It took until the GX era for the mechanic to do anything that wasn't just cheating out cards with Cyberstein and Metamorphosis. Obviously, I'm legally required to sim synchro summoning, despite the fact that cards like Yugioh and Bryonic were summoned so many times Konami had to errata both of them. At its core, synchros required main deck tuners not dissimilar to the polymerization of yesteryear. However, the quality of monster and ease of access was way up, making most decks be incentivized to run some number of tuners. My contractual obligations, however, end in the Zexal era where we peek into Pandora's box. Matching star counts, fill the extra deck. Don't get me wrong, the Exceed mechanic was genius, providing additional function for star counts while at the same time telling players with Gravity Bind and Level Limit Area B to take a hike. And if you watched my What Changed with Yu-Gi-Oh video, you'd know that this was around the time when we started seeing more archetypal focus, with multiple Exceed monsters being designed with specific strategies in mind. My issue, however, is more focused on the generic rank 3 and rank 4 toolboxes that made a chunk of games boil down to sitting on Zen mains or some flavor of Utopia. I can't speak for Pendulums due to taking a nicely timed vacation on the release of Duel Links. But from the little I do understand, in retrospect, summoning 5 cards each turn eclipsed any other worry the game had at the time for most players. And when I came back for Links, an attempt was made to fix the game by requiring extra deck summons to be placed in the Link Arrow zones. This requirement led to more generic accessibility, and probably my least favorite decision of all time, allowing tokens to be used as Link material. And over time, the mechanic meant to undo the pendulum problem exacerbated it, with players attempting to MacGyver you Links, thus completely removing access to the extra deck for the opposing player. Thankfully, it did give way to a new master rule that would allow players to summon extra deck monsters to any zone and told Pendulum players to go fuck themselves. But at this point, it was too late, and the box had already been opened. Generic staples continued to grow to the point where if you're on Twitter, I guarantee you've seen the "What deck am I playing" post. Before I go any further, generic cards are fine, and I love seeing the creativity of smashing two unlikely archetypes together because of incidental synergies. But broadly speaking, why would you ever give a shit about something like Frozen Fitzgerald when with the same star count you could summon the arguably better generic Armades? How many times has Baron just been the only logical choice? So for the sake of creative deck building, I'm very interested to see what this ban brings. Now let's talk about the ban itself. I'm still shocked they banned both of them, but for what purpose? It's very likely that it's an indirect hit to Snake Eyes by removing access to generic negation. Enjoy seeing Fire King Snake Eyes coming back to a locals near you. But let me pose a question to you. Between the two lists we've had this year, it's fair to say we are witnessing a pattern of limiting and banning popular floodgates currently left in the game. Anti-spell, summon limit, and the holy trinity of being an asshole have all been kneecapped within 4 months of each other. I'm not saying call your bookie and put all your money on Apollosa getting banned in September of 2024, but in my anecdotally supported opinion, I feel like I'm seeing an overwhelmingly positive response from the player base about these hits. And this might be cope, maybe it is just an indirect hit to Snake Eyes, but maybe this is the first step in moving away from accessing generically available 3K Omni Negates. So before I close out another video with Bing Bing Wahoo music, let's talk about the other side of this coin. With Baron and Savage banned, what happens now? Well, a lot more decks are going to have to respect cards like Nibiru. Good or bad, I'll let you decide that for yourself. But the viability of a lot of strategies is going to be put into question based purely on the fact that playing the safe line might not be an option anymore. And with the most obvious example of Tempai Dragons, a deck that opts to do most of its play during the battle phase, we are likely going to have another discussion about hand traps eventually. I'm frustrated that I had to reformat this script, but I'm glad Konami did the one thing few people expected them to do. Maybe it's one-off and maybe it's not, and maybe eventually we'll start seeing overly generic main deck staples approach the chopping block. I personally like the change, but ultimately time will tell if it's the right choice. But whatever the case, I'm glad the TCG group gave us the list that they did, because if we had the OCG list, my vacation from the January 2024 format might have ended with my face on the side of a milk carton. Now, if you excuse me, I need to go ask a friend of mine to see if they'll lend me a Trident Dragon while I wait for OTS 26.